So today on the show, I'm very excited to welcome a former New Yorker, now Angelino. We won't hold that against him. Marketing Max. So Max is a serial entrepreneur. He built and sold an award-winning seven-figure agency. Since then, he's worked with more than 200,000. He has more than 200,000 total followers, I should say, developing, impactful marketing content. And since founding the agency, he's focusing on one-to-one consulting, building a portfolio of businesses, and he's developed work that has over 100 million in attributable revenue for brands of all shapes and sizes, worked with over 250 brands. And I'm sure there's a lot more we're going to get into regarding building an agency. So Max, great to have you.
Thank you for having me on the show, Dan. Good to be here.
Yeah, for sure. So before we get into all the fun stuff that we can nerd out on about growing an agency, can you talk a little bit more about your journey and just kind of like how you got started setting up your agency and how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, so I started my first company when I was 16 years old. I was obsessed with entrepreneurship. Both my parents were entrepreneurs. My grandfather came to America with a couple bucks in his pocket, worked his way up the ladder at a industrial kind of manufacturing company, ended up buying the business from the owner and became an entrepreneur many times over. So entrepreneurship always kind of ran in my blood. But when I went to college, I realized kind of the middle ground between entrepreneurship and finance, because I went to college in New York, was investment banking and venture capital and private equity. And so I bounced around Wall Street a little bit after college, and I bombed the Series 7 exam, which is the exam you need to become a licensed investment banker to help sell securities. And I really had no idea what I was going to do next. And a couple weeks after I bombed the Series 7 exam, a client looked at me in the face and said, "I want you to run my Facebook ads." And I had no experience running Facebook ads, really didn't know too much about marketing other than, I majored in business in school. So, knew some acronyms, but not a whole lot. And because I just bombed the Series 7, I said, sure, why don't I give it a shot? Watched some YouTube videos. This was back in 2016, and just approached Facebook ads with like a fresh set of eyes. So much so that in the first 2 weeks of running ads for her, I turned $2,000 of her ad spend into $20,000 in booked revenue for her business. And I was immediately hooked on Facebook ads, Google ads, landing page optimization. I went down to the Barnes & Noble on Fifth Avenue. You're a New Yorker, so you'll know the Barnes & Noble I'm talking about. And I bought every digital ads for dummies and CRO for dummies book, every marketing book and advertising book I can get my hands on, and signed up a couple other clients at the investment bank, found similar successes, and then ended up leaving my career on Wall Street, as I like to say, hanging up my suit and tie, and starting an agency. And so for the next 5 years, I built a 15-person, seven-figure agency, worked with more than 120 something clients, and sold that business almost exactly 3 years ago.
That's great. There's so many places to jump off there. It's interesting because living in New York for however many 14 years, time flies. I know a lot of really smart people much smarter than myself that have been in law or on Wall Street or whatever. And I just know like if they ever wanted to go off on their own and they actually did it, they could probably be more successful than so many other people that are out there. I just think the hard thing for going from that path to another is like the people that do really well on Wall Street or in law or medicine or something. They have this like brightly lit path, and they've spent their whole lives getting really good at playing like this game that is hard to play but is like set up for you. So it sounds like, I don't know, maybe you weren't on Wall Street that long to get too indoctrinated into that, but what was that jump like for you? And was it, how did you feel about making that move?
For me, it was really easy because, as I mentioned, I was kind of bred to be an entrepreneur from a very young age. And so where a lot of people, when they tell their parents or their family, I'm going to start a company, they're like, whoa, that's risky. That's crazy. What are you doing? Well, that's what my parents, I was going to get a job on Wall Street and wanted to be, a partner at a small investment bank in 10 years. They were like, whoa, they were supportive, super supportive, but still like, whoa, I don't know. Like, that's not maybe the best path for you and our family. And so, for me, I'm just lucky that I come from a line of entrepreneurs, and my parents were over the moon and ecstatic, and my family and friends were as well. So, it was always kind of inevitable that I would be an entrepreneur. I guess like I like to joke around that it was kind of like the Sorting Hat. I wasn't like in Harry Potter. I wasn't necessarily looking for an idea. The idea found me, right? Like the right business and the right opportunity found me. My dad's business is client service as well, so I was able to learn a lot from him in terms of how to manage difficult clients and get clients and how to build a client service business. So yeah, for me it was rather easy. It was hard in the first like year or two just because, in my mind I was going to be making, $1 million or $2 million a year, like a year or two after taking the Series 7 exam at this investment bank. And so, 2 years later, I wasn't even making close to that at my agency. It was very rough the first few years, learning how to deal with cash flow and learning how to deal with who to hire and getting clients and all that fun stuff. But yeah, it was a pretty easy journey and switch for me.
Cool. That makes sense. And let's bounce back to the agency. So you had this like this moonshot with Facebook ads and things are going well. Like what were those first years like? And like how did you there's kind of two questions in one. How did you initially position the agency versus how did it evolve?
Yeah, so the interesting thing was I was really helping early stage companies raise capital in investment banking or via investment banking. And so I had a lot of connections to startups, and I went to a lot of startup meetups in New York City, and I was kind of friendly with some venture capitalists and some accelerator programs. And so I was able to kind of carve a little niche out for myself in the startup and tech space in the first few years. The looking back, the hard part or just the thing that kind of sucked about the agency was we just said yes to everything. And because these were startups, they needed help with everything. So, can you help us with our pitch deck to investors? Sure. And I had a graphic designer on staff who would make the ads. And so I was like, sure, we'll charge you X. And they were happy to pay it. Clients would say, hey, like our biggest competitor invests a ton in SEO. Can you do SEO for us? And we would just say yes. And then we would go on YouTube and we watch videos about SEO, or we would study, some books, and we would be like, sure. So in the first 2 years or so, we were a full service marketing agency for startups primarily in New York City. And that's every industry from like apps that help construction workers, I remember, to e-commerce brands to platforms that help um, doctors get more rebates back from insurance companies. Like it was all over the place. And we did so many different things for these companies. After a while, we ended up making a list of all of the different services that we were currently offering clients. It was 19 different services at one point. It was just everything under the sun. But our pitch, to answer your question, apologies for rambling, but our pitch was essentially like, we're your outsourced, affordable marketing team because you can't afford a chief marketing officer. You can't even afford a full-time marketer, even like an entry level one at 70K a year. So, pay us 3K a month, pay us 4K a month, and we can kind of do anything you want within the scope of digital marketing, whether that's, like I said, logo creation, deck design, SEO, Facebook ads. We kind of did everything under the sun in the first couple of years.
Yeah, and then I think this is an important topic, and it's one we hit often on the show, which is when and how and where to specialize and so on. And I think a reason that it creates so much hand wringing is there's so many variables and cross sections on which to specialize. Like you already mentioned a few of them. There's the state or the maturity of the company you work with. There's the industry of the company you work with. There's the services you provide, and then there's all these like intangibles like social causes. Do they support this? Do they support that? And and then you get to the personalities of the people involved, and all of a sudden like it's just this really difficult thing to tackle. But most agencies that are listening like know they probably need to specialize more than they are. There's few that are like, oh, we've got this nailed, right?
Yeah.
So can you dig into that a little bit more? Like what did it take? Like what was that evolution like for landing on what works?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So currently I run a media company. We have a handful of newsletters and like you mentioned, a bunch of social followers. And so brands pay us to get in front of the audience. And I would say more than half of our clients are agencies. And it's so interesting. In the last few weeks, I've had maybe 5 different agency owners DM me on Twitter, DM me on Instagram saying like, hey, I want to sponsor your newsletter. I'm trying to get more clients. I'm really desperate for clients. Can I sponsor your newsletter? Can you give me a little discount? And I say, hey, like, who's your target client? And what do you sell to them? That's always my question I hit with everyone. Like, who's your ICP? Who's your ideal customer profile? And what do you sell to them? And all 5, I was just talking to my wife about this, all 5 said, oh, we can do like anything and we can really work with anyone, but our specialty is X. but we can really work with anyone. And it's just so hard to build an agency with I can work with anyone and I can sell them anything. For me, the thing that allowed me to really niche down and pivot and finally experience the growth that I was looking for in my agency was reading this book that I talk about a lot called Built to Sell. I don't know if you're familiar with it, Dan,
Yeah.
or if you've read it, but that book completely changed my life and completely changed the direction of my career and the direction of my agency. What it does is it's a really easy read. It's like 200 pages, but it walks through an agency owner who's struggling to hire at their agency, struggling to get clients, and struggling to remove themselves from the business. And it walks through how to build a business that you can sell. Obviously, the name of it, Built to Sell, but also build a business that works more like an assembly line and works more like a car factory than a we can do anything for anyone. And I'm happy to build an agency. I believe most agencies, especially under 7 figures, they don't actually have an agency. The founder just has a job, a glorified job where they get to choose who their boss is at any given day. So that book really changed it for us. And at the time, I was obsessed with Mad Men. And so after reading that book, that's what kind of forced us to make a list. I'll never forget this. We were in the conference room B at our co-working space on Madison Avenue in New York City. We made a list of all 19 things. We numbered them 1 to 19 in 2 different columns. Number one, the first column, which had the highest impact in our client's business. Like, what could we actually say? Like, this actually drove revenue, or this drove investors, or this drove whatever app downloads, whatever it is that you want. So number one, which service has the highest impact? Because we knew that would be the stickiest. And number two, what was our highest profit margin, right? What would take us the least amount of time and money to service, we could charge the most for. And it was very clear the number one thing in both of those columns were Google ads. And then the second thing was Facebook ads. So we made that decision right then and there that we were just going to be a Facebook and Google ads agency. And at the time, I was obsessed with Mad Men. And there was a famous episode in Mad Men. I don't know if you've watched that show a bunch, but there's a famous episode in Mad Men where Don Draper, the main character, gets fired from his biggest client. And it's a cigarette brand. And he wakes up and he realizes cigarettes are killing people. And he writes this whole letter, why I'm quitting tobacco. And he puts it as an ad. He pays for the ad in the back of the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, whatever it was back in the 60s. And I literally walked back from conference room B to my laptop. I pulled up Netflix. I found the episode. I went to the episode. I screenshotted on my computer the letter that he wrote. I printed it out at our co-working space. And then I literally rewrote it word for word, saying why we're quitting full service. That's what I called it. Why we're quitting full service marketing. We're only going to do Facebook and Google ads from now on. And we emailed that to all of our clients. We emailed that to all of our referral partners, all of the accelerators and all the VCs that would send us business. And we posted it on LinkedIn, and we made an introduction to all of the clients that we were working with to whoever we thought was best for them to help them with whatever we're no longer doing. And we just said, like, we have to be disciplined about this. And surely enough, our business 2x'd like 90 days later because people knew us as the Facebook ad agency for startups. And this was way before everyone and their brother had a Facebook ad agency or performance marketing agency for startups. Very few people actually figured that out. So that was a little bit of how we were able to kind of niche down and really go from a growth marketing agency to what I call growth advertising. I kind of coined that term back then. And that's how we were able to really differentiate ourselves.
Yeah, I love that story. I love that episode too. It is funny because he does that, and then the afterword of the episode is whoever, like some big wig at one of his clients, takes him aside and is like, "You bit the hand that feeds. Like no one's going to hire you again." And then they go through this. I forgot what happens, but I think there's like
Yeah.
this dark valley they all have to go through after making that jump. Um, what was that like for you? Was there any dark valley of pain that you guys had to go through to come out the other end after making this in what sounds like a much quicker, bolder way than I think a lot of agencies do?
I joke around with my friends to this day who kind of knew me before we sent that letter out and after. And there was one person in my whole community, in my whole world that reached out and was like, you messed up. Like, this is really dumb. and this is stupid and you're going to lose a lot of money and like you're going to go out of business. And it just didn't happen. It was one person. I'm not going to say his name. We're still friends to this day. Yeah, beyond that, it was easy because again, we were confident that we were in business to help people. We want to make the biggest impact possible. And because of my background in finance, it was rather easy to see the ROI of doubling down and niching down. To your point, I think a lot of agency owners, they dip their toe in the water, they do it for a month or two. They don't go balls to the wall. And us sending out that email and posting it on LinkedIn was kind of like us asking the universe to hold us accountable. And from then on, no one asked us for logo help. No one asked us to help with their deck. No one asked us for SEO. So it was like us telling the universe, hey, make it easier for us. Because, a lot of agency owners, they say, okay, we're only working with, to your point, like uh, companies that are good for the environment, if that's the niche, right? Like you called it, I think, an intangible. And someone will come to them and they don't have a product or service that cares about the environment at all. It's just outside of their new niche that they pick. But they're having a slow month and the entrepreneur wants the money because it's found money and they'll say yes. And so for us saying to the world, hey, we're a Facebook and Google ads agency and that's all we do and we really specialize in startups, like again, that made it easier for us because the universe then knew us as a Facebook and Google ad agency. So when you hopped on our website, it didn't say growth marketing. And so when people read growth marketing, they think, oh, that could be posting on Instagram. So we did a lot of like Instagram organic content. When you land on our website, it was we do Facebook and Google ads. You're only getting in touch with us if you need Facebook and Google ads. It just made our life so much easier, you know, right away, like so quickly. And we saw the fruits of it come back. Like I said, 60, 90 days later, because people knew us as that. And outside of that one guy, everyone was like, oh, okay, that's cool. So now anytime someone needs a Facebook and Google ad agency, I think of Max. I think of
So you talked about kind of the front of house change that you enacted, and kind of like talking about how you position yourselves. What were the effects of this back of house? Like, did you have to change personnel? Did you have to let people go? And if so, like what was that experience like?
a great question. No one's asked me that. So at the time, we had two graphic designers, and it was me and my co-founder. So I started the agency with a co-founder. I bought him out about 6 to 9 months after this whole um, reorganization, niching down of services and everything else. But because we had two graphic designers, we didn't need to change personnel because we basically had those graphic designers start creating ads for our clients now and do a little bit more copywriting. The challenge before we did this and before we niched down was we didn't know who to hire because some clients would come to us and they'd say we want SEO and other clients would come to us and they'd want email marketing, and it made it really, really, really hard to know who to hire because we didn't know, were our next 5 clients going to be ads clients? Were they going to be SEO clients? Were they going to be website development? I mean, that's another thing I didn't even mention. We did a ton of websites. Like we became a Squarespace certified like developer. We did like 80 or 100 websites. Like we did everything under the sun. And it was just one of those things where it just made it really, really, really hard to grow and to scale from a business development standpoint, from a hiring personnel standpoint, like who do we hire next, from a cash flow standpoint, because we didn't know that 3 clients are worth X amount. Like once we figured out that we were going to charge whatever it is, to start $3,000 a month to run Facebook and Google ads for a client, we would track our hours and we would know that we have 50% profit margins on the deliverables for all these clients. And the average client would stay a year. Okay, well, now we know that the average client is worth like $13,000, right? Plus or minus. So in profit, in pure profit. And so once we knew that, okay, now we can go invest in our own marketing. Now we know that in order to keep the lights on for 2 more hires that we're going to make, we need 3 clients a month. We need 4 clients a month, whatever the number is. It just made it so much easier for us to grow and scale because it wasn't, oh, we're doing a website for $5,000 and then we're doing SEO for $2,000. And then for this other client, we're running Facebook ads. They can't afford a 3K retainer, but we had a slow month. So we'll lower it down to 1,500. To me, that's just having a job. That's not like a business where I can properly think about servicing like a product or like SKUs. And by allowing or by us niching down to just Facebook and Google ads, charging every single client the same, right? Tracking our hours, knowing on average what our profit margin was, taking our total payroll every month, dividing it by the hours worked, right? And knowing, okay, this is our blended cost per hour, right? Even for what we're paying ourselves as the owners, allows us to think about our business like a business, like an e-commerce brand would think about, okay, I'm buying this widget for $6 and I'm selling it for 12, and my cost of shipping is this, and my cost of and factoring all that in. And okay, if we get 100 more purchases next month, my profit margin would be X. Like, that's business.
Yeah.
And a lot of entrepreneurs I meet with, even ones that are doing, $1 million a year, they don't know those numbers, and they don't even have those numbers because they're so all over the place.
Right. That's great perspective. One thing I kind of want to double click on, which I think is important, is you did this analysis where you figured out where the highest impact thing was, which sounds like for you guys was ads, basically for startups. I think there's agencies listening, some of which are in our training programs and stuff that I've talked about this with recently, and I think that's the hardest part is just figuring out like where do we put our stake in the ground, probably for at least 12 months. Like it's not like you can just it's not like running an ad test. Like it's going to take time to figure out if it works. Can you drill into that a little bit? Like, what was your process for figuring out that that was the highest impact thing? Was it just like obvious in your head? Were you like writing a spreadsheet with the team for a few weeks? Like, what did you have to go through to land on that?
You kind of laid it out earlier, right? There's a few things that you can niche down, and you can niche down in the industry. You can niche down in the service. You can niche down in the geolocation. I only work with people in New York or LA or whatever. Um, First and foremost, I think it's really important for agencies to niche down on services. And so to answer your question, for us, we spent like 4 or 5 hours in conference room B staring at that whiteboard, debating, okay, what's the 12th versus the 14th most impactful, highest ROI service that we offer?
Hmm.
And I like to joke. I was texting my co-founder last night. We're still very good friends, which is honestly one of like the things I'm most proud of in all of my life and in all of business. I'm still very good friends with my co-founder that we parted ways with. But um, I like to joke that like we didn't need to spend 4 hours doing that because it was so obvious that 1 and 2 were Facebook and Google ads. Right. We did a lot of websites. You can't really track the ROI of a website. I mean, in some ways you can say, oh, we got a new website live and we 2x leads. Right. But the profit margin on that isn't as high. And the LTV, the lifetime value of those clients is just not enough. And so for us, it made a whole lot of sense that Google ads was the number one thing. I might have said Facebook ads before. If you listen to any of my other podcasts, sorry, it's a little early morning here, but it's Google ads was the number one thing because once you find the right keywords,
Yeah.
you have the right ads, you really don't need to touch it too much to really have a high ROI or justify, your monthly retainer on Google ads very much. And so Google ads was just like number one and above anything else, the clear winner of ROI. And so for a minute there, we were actually like, oh, should we just be a Google ads agency? Because for a lot of our clients, we would use this strategy called conquesting, which I'm sure you're familiar with and many listeners are familiar with, where we basically bid on a competitor's keyword, right? So if you're Nike and you want to sell more shoes and your biggest competitor is Adidas, you make it so that anytime someone Googles Adidas basketball shoe, you come up first, right? That strategy just printed money for so many of our clients, not necessarily e-com clients, a little bit, but most of the time, they were B2B clients, and it just printed money. So it was like, oh, maybe we should just do Google ads for B2B or just Google ads. And then it became the only other number that was the same in both columns was Facebook ads. And Facebook ads just go so well back and forth or so good together with Google ads. We played around with the idea of like just being a Google ads agency, but then what was the term? Like only being a Google ads agency, but then retargeting with Facebook ads and not actually doing Facebook ads as like a prospecting tool, right? Basically, like drive a bunch of really qualified traffic with Google ads and then retargeting everyone back
Mm.
with Facebook ads to stay top of mind, get that frequency score up as high as possible.
Cool.
But then it was obvious that our profit margin on Facebook ads was really high too. And for other clients, Facebook ads worked really well. So, for us, it was rather easy after those 4 hours of debating what's the 13th most profitable versus the 14th out of the 19.
Yeah.
Um, I kick myself a lot, and my close entrepreneur friends make fun of me that, you know, the real way to niche down in an agency is with a group of companies, is with like a niche, not niching down the service, Facebook, Google ads, but niching down into just B2B or just construction companies. Or I think you guys, right? You guys only work with agencies. I, for whatever reason, can't get myself to do that. I just can't bring myself to pick like a company segment, if you will, or like a company or like an industry niche, I should say.
Yeah.
I'm much more on the service side. And now with Marketing Max, it's even harder because, you know, 250,000 people see my content every single month, or my media company's content every single month. There's, you know, CEOs of very well-known household name e-commerce brands and direct-to-consumer brands that read my content all the time that are asking me, how do we decrease our CAC on Facebook? And then I have a lot of agencies hitting me up saying, how do I get more leads for my agency? So that will always be my Achilles heel. That'll always be my kryptonite.
Yeah, I don't know if it's an Achilles heel necessarily. I think the way that I used to say the word niching, and the way that I say it now is more specializing. I think that I think that it is harder to do that though, just because like, and maybe you disagree. I love your perspective on it, but it seems like if you were to start like the Facebook ad agency in the year 2025, focusing on startups or whatever, it's a much more crowded space than maybe it was in 2016. So I think there's like more to be said for verticalizing than there once was. But if you manage to do something really differently, in a certain service, or with you, with the, with building the asset and the list and the audience, then you probably can afford to go wider. Yeah, that's what I've seen anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we have a handful of different services now that we promote inside of the newsletter. Um, and to your point, because the Marketing Max brand is synonymous with marketing and not B2B marketing or e-commerce marketing, we're pretty industry agnostic with all the services that we offer. But I mean, I do fantasize a lot about owning a business like Exit 5. I don't know if you're familiar with Exit 5, Dave Gearhart. He's a LinkedIn influencer. He has an amazing business full of B2B tech CMOs and marketers.
Yeah.
And that's his target audience. And everyone in his community and everyone that buys his products and everything else are all marketers or CMOs at SaaS companies, right? Like real SaaS companies. And I love that niche. I really, really, really like love that niche. And I was like, oh, I want to go down. They have budget. They understand marketing. They're not founders that come to me and say, Max, I need help with marketing and I have $2 because that's most founders, right? When you really need marketing is when you don't have a budget. And so not even affording my services, but like, hey, if you want results, you have to pay. Like business is a money game. You have to pay to play. Yes, you can find ways to acquire customers for $1,000 a month or $2,000 a month, but like your competitors aren't doing that. And so, I do fantasize about niching down sometimes, but I'm a hypocrite, right? Then someone comes to me and they're in ecom and they want to pay me $5,000 a month to run their Facebook ads, and I'm like, sure, I know how to do it. I've done it literally 100 times for 100 different companies. Like I'm in. But to your point, like I can maybe afford to do that a little bit because the Marketing Max brand is synonymous with marketing and not marketing for B2B and marketing for ecom. I'll shut up. I'm rambling.
No, that's great. What you were saying made me think of like what we encounter with agencies a lot, which is like you're paying to play no matter what you do, right? So like when we're working with agencies that have gotten most of their business from organic referrals, it's like you're paying to play because that's not predictable or sustainable. So there's the opportunity cost that you're paying, and then with outbound, like we're very transparent about the pros and cons with outbound. The con is that you're paying in the form of time because most of the conversations you're going to be having are people who are at an earlier stage of the process, right? And then the cost is going to be the time you spend nurturing them and getting back in touch and all that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
the upside is you're paying a lot less to get that conversation than you would with the alternatives, which to do it sustainably are pretty much ads and content and like the time that goes into creating content, the time that goes into creating content, then paying an advertiser to put up the content. So it's like you're paying no matter what to get it. There's no free lunch and all that good stuff. One thing I wanted to circle back on is you kind of mentioned this idea that I think I come across a lot, which is like you kind of knew what you wanted to do. You kind of knew you wanted to be, Meta ads and Google ads. But I feel like this is really timely now because we're all going through end of year planning and all this stuff, and we all have to go through this rational song and dance, whether it's like an EOS system or some other process for like analyzing what happened and what we're going to do over the next few months. When we all kind of like know, here's how things went, good, medium, bad, and here's what we want to do. So I guess like my question is, what's your planning process look like, and how do you think like when you're planning your business quarterly? Like, let's start there. Like, how are you thinking about things?
Yeah, it's so funny. I was having a call yesterday with one of my best friends who's a groomsman at my wedding. He's the co-founder of a rather large VC-backed tech company that's valued at $250 million. And he calls me and he said, dude, I just got back from our annual planning meeting. And I said, oh, how'd that go? He said, dude, I freaking hate it. It's such a waste of time. He's like, do you do planning? I said, no. He's like, you don't do any planning? I said, no. He's like, you don't know what you're going to spend next quarter? I said, no. He said, I'm so jealous, dude. I don't know if my way of doing it is smart or right. I never did it at the agency. I've never done it since I sold the agency for my media company or any of my other service businesses. I wake up on any given day and I say, here are the things that are important to me. Here's what I think I want to do based on podcasts I listen to or money I want to make or conversations I have with mentors or friends or whatever. And I execute that day. I do not do quarterly planning. I do not do yearly planning. I don't do monthly planning. I don't say I want 3 clients this month and I need to post 6 Facebook ads to get there. I do plan on like a per campaign basis. So, my agency grew predominantly on the back of Facebook and Google ads. I really kind of cracked the code on how to run Facebook ads for my agency and how to run Google ads for my agency. And within that kind of bubble or realm, it's like, okay, if I spend $3,000, I book $3,000 in a month, I book 10 calls, $300 per call. If I close 2 of them, my cost per whatever is whatever. And next month I might want to spend 6 or 10, but I'm certainly not doing anything like EOS or any business planning of any kind. I'm just not that guy. And I really hate being put into a box and setting goals like that. I probably am leaving money on the table by not doing that. But yeah, I don't touch goal setting and planning. I do like a post-mortem, like what did we do well this year and where did we fall short just in general, but it's not Q1 planning and goal setting like any other company does.
I do think that there's a real 80-20 to it, right? Where like good planning is probably what it does is it's mitigating the cognitive biases that you're going to have. Like, am I jumping onto a shiny object? Am I looking at one data point and making a big decision based on it? And then there's kind of the planning as a form of communicating with your team, right? And if your team's not huge, then you probably need to do less of it than if you had a big team. So
Yeah,
it makes sense. Yeah. Um, can we do a random sidebar on conquesting? Because I'd love to just.
sure.
So I've always been like at a loss as to about this topic of conquesting because I'm sort of like, why would just Google allow this? Because they're like, I don't fault anybody for doing it. Once the option's there, there's a gain theory incentive to do it. But why do they allow this? Because it's like it's all about giving customers what they want. If I'm searching for Coca-Cola, I don't want to see Pepsi and vice versa. Like, what is their rationale for doing this?
I have no idea.
Yeah, good enough.
I
That's a good enough answer.
I don't know and I don't care. They allow me to do it. If the numbers work out where I can spend, even if it's expensive, if it's $7 a click, but the people who are Googling whatever that keyword is and clicking on my ad are 99.9% chance of freaking perfect client for me. What do I care? I don't care. I mean, I think what they do is increase the cost. That's why I brought up the CPC thing. I think they charge you more. The quality score in Google Ads is typically worse, right? Higher the quality score, the lower the CPC. And from what I found on Conquesting, the quality score is almost always low. It's like 3, 4 out of 10. So CPCs are higher. But again, if the quality of the person actually searching is really high, then I don't care if Google allows it. It's great. And I'm going to squeeze as much money I can out of that strategy
Yeah,
for
fair
the
enough.
awareness.
It's kind of just my rant against Google that it's just like they have this one product that works really well for them, and it's just increasingly they're just trying to squeeze as much out of it as they can, right? You search for something and it's like the whole thing, the whole first page is just ads now, and competitors can bid on your ads and all this stuff. So anyway,
I mean, to me, that's a beautiful thing.
Sure.
Like where I see a lot of marketers complain about it, it's like, okay, this is the game. Like hate the player, hate the game, you know? Like this is
Oh
the game and I'm gonna figure out how to play inside of it as best as I possibly can. I mean, the way that I was able to grow my agency was bidding on one agency. There was one agency back then. We had a big competitor. They were spending like $15,000 to $20,000 a month on Facebook ads. This was 2017, 2018. And I knew that if someone spends $20,000 a month on Facebook ads, their Google search traffic is probably pretty high, or at least increasing, right? Than it would be if they spent $0 on Facebook ads. So I bid on their name, and I was the first person to do it. And it was literally like $2, $3 a click. And over 6 months, other agencies started to catch on that were much bigger and had much bigger retainers, and they could chart, or they could afford to spend more per click. And so they brought up the cost per click on that particular keyword that literally took my agency from like, I don't know, call it $30,000 a month in revenue to $60,000 or $70,000 a month in revenue, like doubled
Yep.
literally with that strategy. Um, that was a strategy I could no longer use anymore. I couldn't bid on that keyword anymore because it was $9 a click, and I just couldn't afford that.
Right. Yeah, and I don't fault anybody for doing it. I just question like Google's consistency and integrity for a lot, I guess, sometimes. But no, that's interesting, and that all makes sense. And I want to kind of shift gears now to like what you're up to now, and what is it about newsletters? Like, what do you like about newsletters so much?
Man, I love that newsletters are essentially a free way to do what the biggest companies on planet Earth do exceptionally well, which is stay top of mind with your ideal customer as much as possible. Geico, State Farm, Bud Light, Coca-Cola, they spend literally billions of dollars a year on marketing. That way, the moment you think of car insurance, you think of Geico. And the moment you think of, I need a tasty drink, or you're at a restaurant and you want a drink, you think of Coca-Cola before anything else. They spend billions of dollars on frequency score, right? On trying to make sure that that you see their product as much as freaking possible. That way, when it comes time to buy, when you are ready to buy, you think of them first. Newsletters are the best way to do that in a B2B world, not just B2B, but I always talk about it from a B2B space. You can collect someone's email for $2, for $3 on Facebook ads. You can collect a ton of information on them the moment they sign up. You can even qualify them as a lead the moment they sign up for your newsletter. And then if they're not qualified, or if they're not interested in switching agencies right now, then you have their email address to send them something valuable every single week forever until they are ready to buy, or until they do have a really low quarter, right? If they just did their quarterly planning and they're like, man, we had a low quarter. Maybe we need to think about switching our SEO agency or our PR agency or our Facebook ad agency. And it's like, oh, I've been getting this newsletter from this agency out of New York for, 6 months now. They seem to be pretty good. Maybe I'll book a call with them. And you can do that for virtually $0 instead of having to go spend billions of dollars like Geico and Pepsi and all the biggest companies in the world do, or like a lot of e-commerce brands do, having to spend tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars a month on Facebook ads to consistently stay top of mind. You could do that in a very intimate way in their inbox every single week for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, makes sense. And I think that that's probably not lost on lots of agencies listening. They're doing it on a smaller scale to promote, like, hey, we just did this crazy big project and here's how we did it. I think the issue is like consistency, like keeping the newsletter going and keeping it fresh. And then bigger than that, like how do we lead this to conversions, right? There's like maybe we have whoever, various VPs of marketing, CMOs checking out what we're up to, but like how do we take this from somebody getting on a call to discuss a six-figure engagement with me? Any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I think the biggest issue is you kind of nailed it. Everyone is sending case studies on the newsletter. Everyone has case studies. Of course, you're going to share the best story. My dad has this great quote. He says, people who invest in the stock market, they only share when they invest in a company that goes up.
Yeah.
They never say, I lost $30,000 on Snapchat, investing in Snapchat or whatever. You only hear wins from people. Same with an agency, right? You're not going to share, hey, this client churned and they left us and they sued us because we promised them a 10x ROI and we didn't deliver it. No, you only share the wins. And so if you every week or every month or daily or whatever in your newsletter are sharing your wins, you are like every other agency on planet Earth. You're not actually distinguishing yourself. So how do you win with a newsletter as an agency owner? How do you convert subscribers of your newsletter into, as you said, six-figure opportunities? Well, number one, You share value every single week. You share how to every single week. How to lower your cost to acquire a customer, how to increase your ranking on SEO, how to build a website that converts more of your customers. You share how to, you share tips every single week that establishes you as a thought leader, right? That establishes you as a person who knows what the hell they're talking about in the discipline that you're eventually trying to sell them to. And then what you need to do is you need to treat your newsletter like another person's newsletter, and you need to write ads and you need to create a landing page that is just like an ad and a landing page that you'd put in someone else's newsletter or that you would run as your agency on Facebook ads or on Google ads. And you need to give people a reason to reach out. Everyone plays this game. I'm going to send a case study and then I'm going to put my Calendly link at the bottom. And people are going to love the case study. They're going to be blown away by the results, that they're going to want to talk to me. Of course, they're going to want to talk to me. Not how the game works.
Right.
Not how
Yeah.
the game works.
Yeah. And the way that we've thought about it is it's almost like you're helping solve one problem because it introduces the next problem. And then that's when people are going to be likely to engage with you. You're not just saying like, here's how awesome we are and so on. I also think that one thing that holds people back a lot is, and maybe I'm projecting a little bit because we've never been like black belts with production value, as everyone listening and watching now can probably see. I don't have any boom light or whatever. I don't even know the name of the boom mic, whatever the lights are I'm supposed to have. So, but I do think that gets people stuck a lot, where it's like, hey, there's that great Napoleon line where it's like quantity takes on a quality all of its own. I wouldn't say quantity, but I would say like consistency takes on a quality all of its own. So like, and there's a level at which, trying to get everything perfect is going to hold that back.
So I think where most agency owners go wrong is something that you said earlier, which is most agency owners, they get to 50K a month or 100K a month or maybe even $200,000 a month with their agency solely on the back of referrals and word of mouth and maybe some networking. And so they're not used to actually investing in growth, and they're not actually used to investing in client acquisition. And so they'll send out a few newsletters. They won't get any results. They won't get any clients or potential clients to book calls, and then they'll give it up because they're not used to playing the long game with their own agency, and they're not used to investing in client acquisition for their own agency. And it's just the old story, what got you here won't get you there. And it's the agency owners that are able to really invest and figure out their CAC to LTV for their agency. How much do we need to spend on growing our agency, right? To actually grow top line, grow bottom line, acquire more clients. The agencies that figure out their own CAC to LTV are the ones that win and are the ones that grow and scale. But most agency owners, like I said before, they're not actual business owners. And no offense to anyone listening, but they don't actually have a business that can run without them, that has SKUs and products and numbers and a P&L, right? They have themselves and a handful of freelancers or themselves and a few employees, and they don't think about their business like a business, right? They don't think about taking risks. They don't think about investing in things like a restaurant owner would, right? You got to spend money on local mailers and see how many people come in the door because of that. And you got to invest in a new sign, and you got to see how many people actually come in from seeing the new sign that's brighter and more neon color than the old sign or whatever it is. Most agency owners, are what I call accidental agency owners. No one wakes up as a kid and says, I want to start a marketing agency. That's just not how it works. And so, you kind of get this fooled by randomness syndrome where, you think you're so good at marketing, you think your agency is so good, all of your clients are coming word of mouth, which is freaking fantastic. But if you really want to grow and scale your agency, you have to invest and you have to spend money that's going to be lit on fire. You have to try Facebook ads and Google ads and cold email and cold LinkedIn and newsletters and conferences and booths at events. And you have to try all of these things. The biggest agencies in the game are doing that. And what's stopping you from doing that? It's just fear of losing money. And because it's all 100% your money, right? You need an ROI guarantee. And then Alex Ramosi flooded the market with a ton of cold email and cold LinkedIn ads and whatever guarantees. And all those people suck because they don't know how to actually market their own business. So I can continue my rant, but I'll stop there. It's just sad. It's just sad. And the agencies that spend money are the ones that figure it out.
Yeah, and I think that just to simplify it, because you're talking about CAC and all this stuff. Really, like we've had like Marcel Petitpas on this, so it's not just me making up these numbers, but like 8 to 14% of top line revenue going to sales and marketing, right? So if keep it, let's say 10% just to make it easier. If you've got $1 million agency, you're spending $80,000 or so, or $100,000 on at least on sales and marketing. And if that's not happening, then it's nothing's going to change really. So that's not always the case. And yeah, we could do a whole other episode probably on what's happened since Hormozy, for better or worse. So um, I guess could you
Yeah.
kind of finish stuff off, Max? Like, what are you excited about over the next few months? What are you working on?
Well, I am excited. So this year, I don't know when this is going live, but this is the end of 2024. So this year, 2024, we launched a handful of different service businesses uh, that we promoted inside of our newsletter. So as Marketing Max, my master plan was build a media company. We work with some of the largest names in the marketing space who advertise with us, like HubSpot and Notion and Monday.com and MailChimp and Particle and some of the biggest triple whale, some of the biggest companies in the space advertise with us, but we have a ton of ad inventory. And so the mission and the goal and the strategy was always plug our own products and services into the unsold inventory. And this year, if I don't look at a single day, like I said before, and if I really try to analyze the year as a whole, we got really good at understanding how to acquire clients from my newsletter, how to turn clients from my newsletter into customers of these service businesses. And so what I'm most excited about in 2025 is we're going to be consolidating all of these services businesses into one brand and going to the market with a really, really, really compelling, really B2B offering to help agencies and to help any service businesses, lawyers, real estate, the agents, accountants, um, software businesses generate a shit ton of leads via all three of these different services that we offer, kind of like I said, combining them into one and going to market. So I'm really excited. Kind of feel like it's a fresh page with a new brand, leveraging all of the case studies from all these different services that we launched in 2024, and then just continuing to grow the newsletter. We double newsletter growth or subscriber count every year. So just continuing to grow the audience and the community size.
That's awesome, man. And congrats on the growth. And where can people
Thank you.
go to check out what you're up to?
Yeah, if you have questions on anything, I respond the fastest on Twitter. So you can DM me on Twitter. You can go to marketingmax.io to learn more about me and what we do. But yeah, if you go to marketingmax.io or Twitter, that's where to find me.
Awesome, man. Really appreciate your time, Max.
Thanks for having me, Dan.